right, and welcome everybody. Welcome Linda from Georgia, your very first session. Great, awesome. Scott's in Los Angeles. Welcome all the first timers. Exactly, that's what you, Linda, said. So anyway, welcome everybody to our Kidlit Distancing Social, and we have a very special one for you tonight. You're gonna be taught by Laura. And as I was mentioning kind of in the pregame, Laura is really, in my opinion, I'm biased, but there's a lot of other people who are not biased who think the same thing, one of the best writing teachers in the industry. And we figure once in a while on the Kidlit Distance Social, we'll just turn the mic over to Laura and let her teach. And that's exactly what's going to happen tonight. So welcome everybody. We're really glad you're here. And I am also going to, well, I don't know if it's, we're going to try to put it on Facebook. That is always a question, but let's see. Well, let's see, we're going to try to do it. So as soon as I get that up there, we will officially begin. And in the meantime, I'm going to set the chat box to so that you can only speak with us. So you can feel free if you have any comments for us. If you have questions during the session, put them in the Q&A box, and Laura will be answering them there. All right. All right, looks like we're just about ready on Facebook. So hello to all the Facebook folks. And I think we're live. All right. And great, technical stuff done. We're ready to go. And Laura is the expert maybe on how to move the slides on her computer because I don't appear to know how.
Why is that not working? I don't know.
All right.
It's frozen.
Hi, first timers. It's not normally quite like this. Sometimes though.
Sometimes it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, increasingly.
Maybe because
right,
you went to Facebook and messed us up.
I'm going to stop the share, and we're going to start sharing again and see if that helps. Let's see here. No.
Nope, wrong one. There we go. Are you sharing?
Yeah, but it's not moving. Okay, there we go. This was the second one?
No, go to the beginning.
That is?
Nope. I don't know why it's doing that.
Okay, well, we'll figure it out. We'll manage.
It was fine until John sat down.
I know, I'm usually
It worked great earlier.
I'm the cause. Okay, so we don't know about the slides, but there we go. Okay. So anyway, as I was saying, we are going to hear from Laura today. One thing I did want to mention, I don't know if the slide is here.
It should be.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Those of you who are brand new and you maybe just found us on Facebook and someone sent you the link, we would love to stay in touch with you and let you know every week what the topic is and also be able to tell you when the repeat's up. So the easiest way to do that is also to get a very cool free gift, and that is to go to write4kids.org/ultimate-cheat sheet, and you will get our Ultimate Children's Writing Cheat Sheet, which basically condenses 30 years worth of our best writing wisdom into one ebook. It's really tremendous, and we want you to have it. It's something special we did for our 30th anniversary, and this way you will also be on our notification list. All right. That's it for me. I've come in and I've messed things up enough for one night. And so we're going to have Laura come, and she's going to be teaching you, and you'll be in great hands. So enjoy yourselves. And in a minute, here's Laura.
All right. I'm beaming to you from an undisclosed location. So just hang on a second. Okay. Yay. Hello, everybody. Welcome, and I'm happy to see you all. And so every week, for those of you who are new, we do Where in the World is Laura, where I have some literary themed landmark. Oh, okay. Well, Jean got it right away.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm going to let some other people guess too. Good for you, Jean. I knew you guys would get it. Yeah, yeah. Lots of you are getting this because it's not that difficult, but I think it's cool. So this is
Wait,
called.
I think you should
I'll let a few. I'll let a few. Okay. Well, this this particular landmark, for those of you who didn't already guess, is not really literary, but it's tied to a book. So let's see. We had 2 people already guess it. And it's, if anybody else wants to try to guess, it's in the United States. And I'll give you all just 1 second if anybody else wants to throw any guess, and then I will tell you a little more about it. But I see 2 of you got it like that. It's in New York, if any of you need another clue. And I don't know, let me look at the Q&A and see if anybody's guessing there. Oh, yeah, Susan got it in the Q&A. So we've got 3 people who already got it. So I'm going to just tell you what it is. So yes, the Little Red Lighthouse. So let me go to the slide. The Little Red Lighthouse is in Fort Washington Park in New York City, and it's located underneath the George Washington Bridge and along a treacherous section of the Hudson River, once known as Jeffrey's Hook. This is one of the few surviving lighthouses in the area, and it was originally erected in Sandy Hook, New Jersey in 1880, and it became obsolete and was dismantled in 1917, and the Coast Guard moved it to its current location. And then the George Washington Bridge opened in 1931, and there were lights on the bridge, so they didn't need the lighthouse anymore. And they were going to dismantle it, but it was saved by a picture book. This picture book, The Little Red Lighthouse and the Great Gray Bridge, by Hildegard Swift and Lind Ward, was published in 1948. And there was this just touched the hearts of so many people, this story that children and adults wrote letters and sent money to help save this icon from the auction block. And so it has been preserved, and it stands there to this day. So I just thought that was kind of cool that a children's book could save a lighthouse. I love that. Okay, so let's continue. We're going to celebrate. And again, for those of you who are new, we do this every week. We celebrate the successes of our people. So Karen Autio is celebrating her new Wild Sea Otter Adventure chapter book, Kalan and the Stink Ink. What a great title. Illustrated by Emma Peterson, coming out this fall from Kruth Press. Now, I had to learn about Kruth Press so I could say that word. Kruth Press is in British Columbia, and they do great books. I looked them up. And a kruth is a Welsh stringed folk instrument, and there are only 4 examples of original kruths in existence today, but they were commonly played throughout what is now the UK and during the 18th, or until the 18th century. Sorry about that. So we all learned a new word, and congratulations, Karen. That is awesome news. If you subscribe to our newsletter, Children's Book Insider, you will recognize these next 2 names. So Lynn Marie, who is a picture book author, and she is the person responsible for our editor and agent spotlight interviews in the newsletter and those great above the slush pile submission codes that you get along with those. She contributed or participated in a recent Pitter Twitch. Okay, Twitter pitch party, Twitter pitch party, and had 3 requests from editors for submissions. And one of them is already headed to the acquisition meeting. That's fast. So Lynn Marie, good luck. We got our fingers crossed for you there, but that is excellent news. And PJ McIlvain, another contributor who does our great featured interviews with authors, she hosted a successful Twitter pitch party at PB Pitch. So I'm guessing that's the one Lynn Marie was so active in. And she said, despite publishing being slowed down by the pandemic, many agents and editors attended to check out the pitches, and they liked the pitches, and they were asking for submissions. So that is really good news for all of us. It means that despite the fact that things are a little slow right now in the industry because of the pandemic, editors and agents are still looking for and acquiring new manuscripts. And by the way, if you are thinking, what is a Twitter pitch party? Don't worry, we got you covered, because PJ is going to come on a distancing social later in July and tell you all about how to participate in Twitter pitch parties. That is hard to say. And how to create a great pitch and what happens at these parties. And there are pitch parties for all different kinds of writing, and each one is specialized for either picture books or science fiction or middle grade fiction or whatever the pitch party happens to be. But she's going to come on and tell you all about that. So keep an eye out for that one, because that is going to be great. And me, I'm celebrating me today. I organized a book drive with the Fort Collins chapter of Moms Demand Action, and we donated 22 picture books to our local library that highlight the accomplishments, history, and struggles of Black people and people of color to help foster conversations with children about racism, tolerance, equality, and justice. And each of these books will have a book plate inside dedicating the book in memory of a gun violence victim. And the local paper is going to write about it. So yay, I'm very excited about that. If you don't want to hear about me, if you rather hear about you, which frankly I would, send us your good news. So email me at mail@writeforkids.org and put celebrate in the subject line. And we will feature you on a future distancing social. And your good news can be anything. It does not have to be a book contract. It can be that you found a great critique partner. It can be that, you finally finished the first draft of your manuscript. Every step along the way, we want to help you celebrate. So please send me your good news and we will feature you on a distancing social. And if you need to contact us for any other reason, please use the same email, mail@writeforkids.org. And we can help you with anything you need at that email. So now we're going to take a poll. We do this every week. So, and this is very scientific, so I hope every one of you who's here actually participates in the poll. It's very important. So, since we're talking illustrations and picture books today, who's your favorite illustrator? You have Eric Carle, Ernest Shepard, Beatrix Potter, John Klassen, Dan Santat, Sophie Blackall, Lewin Pham. So I got some classic, iconic illustrators. I have some newer current illustrators. You get to pick. I want to hear who's your favorite. They're all wonderful. And Lewin Pham, her book Bear Came Along and won a Caldecott honor this year. Sophie Blackall, her book Hello Lighthouse actually won the Caldecott. I think it was this year. I've lost track of dates. So Dan Santat has won it, I think twice. Of course, John Klassen is awesome. He's won it as well. So, I mean, we got some good, really good heavy hitters up here. All right. I'm going to give you 10 more seconds to vote. And if you don't know who these people are, then you should write down their names and go check out their books. that is part of the reason we do these polls, so you can learn about who some of these really great creators are in the children's book industry. Okay, 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3. This is a really close one, by the way. We have 3 neck and necks here. So get in your last minute votes, or we might have to have a vote off next week to, settle this. Okay. Oh, while we're voting, I see a question in the chat box from Beth. Can you describe a book plate? A book plate is actually like a little sticker that goes inside the book. And sometimes authors, when they are doing book signings, what they will do is sign a bunch of book plates ahead of time and give those out to people. If it's someone who they think the author's going to have like 200 people standing in line to get their book signed, the author will sign a bunch of book plates ahead of time. So it's like a sticker that goes inside the book. And the library, our library, has book plates. If you donate a book in memory of someone, they will put a book plate in there and write the name of the person who you're donating in memory of. So that's what that is. Okay, we are ending the poll. And I'm going to share the results. Just squeaked it out, Beatrix Potter, right at the end. Yay. I can't argue with that. I mean, she was amazing. So thank you for voting. Your input is very important to us. Okay. And now, publishing news and links of interest. I have a few interesting things for you today. If you have an adult or young adult science fiction, fantasy, or horror book coming out this fall or next spring, between September of this fall and February of 2021, Publishers Weekly, which is the big industry magazine, trade magazine, is putting together a special feature on these books and wants to hear from you. So they are interested in works in the science fiction, fantasy genre, and also horror with these particular themes here: race, gender, building an equitable society, illness, pandemics, the post-apocalypse, superheroes and supervillains outside of the comic book and graphic novel area, and witchy dark fantasy. So lots of different areas there of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And if you have, news about trends, I think they're thinking, I got this right from their website. So when they're saying pitches on other trends are welcome. So if you're writing something that doesn't quite fall within this particular parameters that are described here, but you feel it kind of still falls under that big umbrella of science fiction, fantasy, or horror, you can send it to them. So they want information about your book, when it's coming out, what it's about, only new titles that are being published between September and next February. So you can send this information to features@publishersweekly.com by July 15th and put call for info, semicolon, or colon, SFF in the subject line. So they might feature your book in Publishers Weekly, which would be really awesome. I don't think they're interested in self-published titles. I did not get that impression. You can always, excuse me, send it. But I think they are mainly interested in books that are being published traditionally. So, comp titles, that's my second bullet point. If you don't know what that term means, a lot of agents and publishers now are saying when you submit a query letter to them, list some comp titles. Comp titles are titles that are similar to yours as far as the subject matter, the tone, the age group, the audience, that will give the editor or agent kind of a rough idea of the market potential for your work. Authors are always asking, how do you pick which comp titles to mention in your query or cover letter? So There's a website called the Sub-It Club, which stands for Submission Club. And they have this great post, 6 tips for choosing comp titles. And I created a bit.ly link here, bit.ly/choosing comp titles. They give you a lot of really good guidance on how to pick the comp titles that should go in your cover or query letter. Also, their website, subitclub.com, has a lot of great other tips on the submission process. And they also have a private Facebook group that you can ask to join where they talk about submission stuff. So that might be a really good resource for you. For self-publishers, Apple is discontinuing iBooks Author. It's an electronic publishing platform that allows you to self-publish straight to ebook on July 1st. It's encouraging Mac users to use Pages to create ebooks. Please don't ask me about that because I am not a Mac user, but I know Pages is on the Mac. I guess Pages has been developed enough that they have all the bells and whistles that you could get on iBooks Author. So books created on iBooks Author before July 1st will remain available on the Apple Books site. So don't worry about that. If you've got that out there, don't worry about it. But going forward, you want to use Pages to create any ebooks that you want to sell through Apple. And finally, Nathan Bransford is a great, you should be following his blog. He was former agent, he's a writer, and he has just wonderful articles on the writing process. And he has a regular feature called Page Critique, where you can submit the first page of your manuscript and he will critique it on his blog. So he takes your name off. Nobody's going to know whose it is, but he will do a thorough critique of the first page right there on his blog. And so if you're interested in that, check that out. Also, you could read the past posts where he has critiqued other first pages, and you're going to learn an awful lot just from reading those. So that's nathanbransford.com/blog. Okay. So tonight, we're going to talk about my favorite thing, picture books. And we are going to talk about the interplay between words and pictures. And this is important if you are a writer. It's also important if you are an author illustrator, because the act of illustrating a picture book is much more complex than writing or than creating a nice picture. You have to tell a story with your pictures and add to what the words are saying. So we're going to look at 4 books tonight, and I'm actually going to be reading 3 of them to you so we can really go through them. And then the 4th one, I'm just going to show you some pages from it. And we're going to break down what the words didn't say, but the pictures left in, and how the words implied illustration possibilities for the illustrator. Now, 3 of the 4 of these are written and illustrated by different people. One of them is written and illustrated by the same person, but I have always believed that it wouldn't have made any difference. The text is so amazing that another illustrator could have brought just as much, or vice versa. If Oliver Jeffers had just illustrated this book, but someone else had given him this text, it would have turned out just as good. So I have all of these up on ebook, so I am going to switch my screen and hopefully you will see it. So where am I starting? Okay. Let's see. And I think John, okay. Goodness, uh-oh, that's not what I want. Oops. I should never let John sit down at my computer. Okay, sorry, ignore this. I can't close that. We are having problems tonight. Okay, I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to start over. How about that? Okay, so now I want you to tell me what you can see. Okay, I'm going back here, share screen. Oh, come on, there we go. Ta-da! You should be all seeing, hopefully, Sam and Dave dig a hole. And I'm going to open the chat box so you can tell me if that's what you're seeing. Yes, yay, thank you, Robin. Okay, so Sam and Dave dig a hole. There's a little tiny cover right there. This is written by Mac Barnett and illustrated by John Klassen, one of the illustrators on our survey. And a lot of you probably read this, but we're going to go through it. And by the way, the kinds of things I'm talking about as we go through this, all these books, are the kinds of things you want to look at when you are reading picture books yourself. We talk about how important it is to read like a writer or read like an author illustrator. And what you're going to be looking at are the kinds of things I'm going to be talking about tonight so you can learn from published books. So, Sam and Dave dig a hole. On Monday, Sam and Dave dug a hole. That is a very just lay it out there statement, but that is Mac Barnett's tone of writing. He's very straightforward. He's got this very dry humor, and he allows the illustrations to add a lot of the humor that come out of the book. Now, this particular book, as well as another one I'm going to be reading, are examples of stories where one thing is happening in the pictures and a different thing is going on in the text. When you have a story like that, the words really convey the character's point of view. They show what the characters know. The pictures show everything else, a lot of what the characters don't know. And that creates the humor for kids. Kids are looking at the pictures while an adult is reading the words. And when the kids feel like they are smarter than the character in the story, they think that's hysterical, hilarious. So this book, as well as the Oliver Jeffords book I'm going to read, are that type of story. When should we stop digging? Asked Sam. We are on a mission, said Dave. We won't stop digging until we find something spectacular. Okay, I want to back up a second. No, come on, it's not going to let me. Never mind. I just noticed this tree, okay? This tree has apples on it. That's important. A talented illustrator will add little details like that the author might not even think of, but that the kids are going to pick up on, and it's going to end up being important somewhere down the road. So just keep that in mind. And as an author, you don't have to think of all that stuff, because you have to trust that the editor and the art director at the publishing house are going to find an illustrator who can handle that, who can think beyond your words. And that is why it's not usually up to the author who gets to illustrate their book, because they don't know all of that. They don't think along those lines. But the editor and the art director will pull an experienced illustrator into the project who has already demonstrated that they can do that. So they're going to find something spectacular. That's an important phrase too. That's a big word. What is going to be spectacular? This is going to be awesome. The hole got so deep that their heads were underground, but they still had not found anything spectacular. We need to keep digging, said Dave. So notice too, again, talented illustrator, notice how the page is laid out. And he's only illustrating the bottom third of the page, and we're going down. It's like, where is this picture going to go? But all of this is important in the design of the book. So if you are self-publishing, you have to have all of this in your head and know that you have to find an illustrator who can do all of this. It goes way beyond just drawing a nice picture. There's a whole design element here involved as well. Come on. So they kept digging. Now, we have some other details showing up here in the picture. Again, not mentioned. First of all, nowhere in the text did it say their dog came along, but there's a dog in the picture. The dog has showed up in this story. And the dog is really important because look at what the dog knows. The dog knows something they don't. The dog knows there are spectacular things somewhere. He can sense it. And Sam and Dave are missing them entirely. And then we have a cat up above who's just watching like, oh, please. So those are details that the illustrator added to the story that weren't even in the text. Sam and Dave are clueless, and the sort of deadpan nature of the text, the tone, conveys that beautifully. He's not telling us Sam and Dave didn't know what they were doing because we're in Sam and Dave's perspective in the text. They don't know that they don't know what they're doing. But we see that because the illustrations give us the big picture. They took a break. Dave drank chocolate milk out of a canteen. Sam ate animal cookies he had wrapped in their grandfather's kerchief. Maybe, said Dave, the problem is that we are digging straight down. Yes, said Sam, that could be the problem. I think we should dig in another direction, said Dave. Yes, said Sam, that is a good idea. So right now the kid is going, no, keep going straight down, because we see where that huge diamond is right below them, right? And look at the dog. The dog's like, no, dudes, it's right here. You're almost there. But they are clueless. And also, let's look at this text. Dave drank chocolate milk out of a canteen. Sam ate animal cookies he had wrapped in their grandfather's kerchief. Right there, that's the first time we know Sam and Dave are related. They have the same grandfather. They might be brothers, they might be cousins, who knows? But the canteen, the grandfather's kerchief, that's old school. That's like old school scouting, camping, stuff. And that kind of gives us a palette for the colors. You notice these colors are all the browns and the grays, and they kind of hark back to like the old TV shows from the 60s and, old camping gear. So you can plant with your words a few specific details like that help the illustrator say, okay, this helps me with the tone, and I'm going to create a color palette that reflects all of this. I have a new idea, said Dave. Let's split up. Really, said Sam. Just for a little while, said Dave. It will help our chances. Okay, Dave's clearly in charge here. You notice he's the one always giving the instructions, and Sam is kind of following along. Again, he never said, Mac Barnett never said Dave was the older brother. Dave's the one who's in charge. But we get that from their dialogue, little by little. And again, the dog is going, dudes, you're almost there, and you're not paying attention to me. So it's very funny for the kid who's reading this story or having it read to him. Okay, so Dave went one way and Sam went another, and clearly they both missed the biggest diamond of them all. And I love sort of the geometric nature of the illustrations. And again, the way the book is laid out in portrait style here, it just goes so well with the story. So again, if you're self-publishing, you want to think about that. Portrait versus landscape, which one is going to fit your story better? But they did not find anything spectacular. Maybe we should go back to digging straight down, said Dave. And the dog's like, no, you just missed it again. Sorry, I don't know why this squished it. Yes, said Sam, that is a good idea. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, look how close they were to the most enormous diamond. And again, the words tell us nothing about it. The illustrator brought all of that to the book. Sam and Dave ran out of chocolate milk, but they kept digging. They shared the last animal cookie, but they kept digging. So look at those details again. We're going back to the chocolate milk and the animal cookie. Those are two details that kids can appreciate and they will remember, and they're almost out of their provisions. So that's starting to heighten the tension a bit. What are they going to do when they run out of food and they're all the way down this huge hole? How are they going to get out? And now look, the dog is looking down and he senses there's something down there. Now remember, their goal was to find something spectacular. What's more spectacular to a dog than a bone? After a while, Sam sat down. Dave, he said, I am tired. I cannot dig anymore. I am tired too, said Dave. We should take a rest. And there you go. Again, right over the bone. But look at what the dog's going to do. He's going to start digging. He's like, I'm done with you guys. I'm taking care of things. So Sam and Dave fell asleep and the dog is digging. And again, look at how this illustration is laid out. The dog is actually digging off the page. And then he goes a little too far and digs right through the world. And the bone falls through. And then Sam and Dave were falling. Everybody fell through the hole. Sam and Dave fell down, down, down. Again, look at this illustration. It's what I love about John Klassen. There's not a lot of clutter in the background. It's a very clean illustration, but it is so powerful. Until they landed in the soft dirt. Well, said Sam. Well, said Dave. That was pretty spectacular. Now look at the tree. The tree has pears on it. They're not home. They're in a different world right now. The cat is there, and the cat is looking up because they just fell through the sky. But they went inside for chocolate milk and cookies. So they wanted to find something spectacular. They ended up in a completely different place, but they don't know it yet. They don't have a clue. The dog got his bone, and the dog is looking at the pear tree and back at the cat, and they're like, they're clueless. So that's where the book ends, which is also wonderful because it allows the child to imagine what actually happened after this when they went into the house. Did they find their grandfather in there? A different world grandfather? We don't know. It allows the kid to just imagine. So you don't have to provide a really solid ending to your picture book. Depending on the kind of story it is, you can allow for interpretation on the end. But that is one way the words and pictures work together beautifully with that book. I know you have a lot of questions, and we will get to them all at the end. I want to show you When You Are Brave. So again, I just want someone to please tell me in the chat box that, yes, Catherine said, notice how the diamond gets bigger and bigger with each page turn. It does. And that's what's so amazing about that book. They wanted to find something spectacular. Spectacular can be a different thing for every person. To the kid reading the book or to the grown-up, it might be, oh, I want that big diamond. The dog wanted the bone. That was spectacular. Sam and Dave really just wanted to go on an adventure, and they got it. So everybody's happy at the end. It's great. Okay, so I hope you're seeing When You Are Brave. This is a very different kind of story. This is by Pat Zeitlo Miller and illustrated by Eliza Wheeler. And this is a story, I picked this because this is really about emotions and about what's going on inside you. And that is a very hard thing to write about in a picture book. And so, oh, you're not seeing it. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to start sharing again. I thought I could just switch to another screen, but apparently I can't. There we go. So now I hope you are seeing When You Are Brave. So please tell me, tell me in the chat box if you're seeing it. Yes, good. Yay, thank you. Okay. Again, as I was saying, this is more of an emotionally driven story, and so you have to find a way to imply illustrations with books like this. So here we go. Why is this not going forward? There we go. Okay, I got to close my chat box so I can see it. Okay. Some days when everything around you seems scary, you have to be brave. And again, she's not telling us what is scary to this girl, but it is clear from the illustration that she's moving. Again, look at what's in the box. There's a dog, there's some toys in there, and it's kind of hard to tell in this illustration. One's a dog, one's a caterpillar, stuffed caterpillar, and one's some kind of stuffed bird. Brave as a bird that steps from its nest, hoping to soar through the sky. Brave as a dog that wanders for miles, searching for one well-known light. So here they're saying goodbye to the neighbors, friends, and the friends have a dog. Important detail, okay? And again, clearly they're moving to a bigger house because mom's going to have a baby. All of this information is contained in the pictures, not in the words. The words are about what's going on inside the character, in their emotions, in their thoughts, and the pictures are the physical manifestation of that. Brave as a caterpillar that builds a bed, wondering when it will wake. Because some days are full of things you'd rather not do. So we have a caterpillar hanging from the leaf there. It's early morning, they're leaving this town where they live. And this next spread, I think, is really, really brilliant on the illustrator's part. So previously, the words were, because some days are full of things you'd rather not do. Now, the other great thing about this text is the author is speaking directly to the reader, saying, this is what you're feeling, acknowledging the child's emotions and what they're going through, not telling them what they're feeling, not telling them what they should be feeling, but acknowledging the feelings. And that is really so important in this kind of picture book. Like plunging into a pool all by yourself, hoping you'll swim and not sink. Or standing alone in front of a crowd, searching for one friendly face. Or boarding the bus and riding to school, wondering what lies ahead. So these are all things that this girl had not wanted to do. And by showing them in a photo album, it shows us that these are actual events from her life, things that she experienced. And that's really an important detail. At times like these, the world can seem too big, too loud, too hard, too much. And the way that was illustrated was driving through this noisy, busy city where there's just so many sights and sounds and everything is not familiar. And that was scary. While you feel too small, too quiet, too tired, not enough. So these words are the opposite of the words on the previous page. And again, the illustrator just brings this home so beautifully with this tiny little car way down toward the bottom of the spread, these huge buildings. On those days, look deep inside to find the courage you need. It might be hidden away, but, and again, these blues also, is very emotional color. It still hasn't, the sun hasn't shown yet. It's raining. She's feeling depressed, and the color palette brings that out. Again, a talented illustrator will know this and will bring all these details to the story. If you close your eyes and breathe, you will see it shining its light in the dark, warm, steady, safe. Your light might be small to start, just a spark, but you can turn it into a flame. So this is important. Instead of the author telling the reader, have courage, because what is courage? You know, if you're 4 or 5 years old, how do you explain courage to a kid? But if you say you have a light inside you that you can turn into a flame, that is a much more concrete visual manifestation of the concept of courage, and it gives the illustrator something to draw. So that's important. Picture it in your mind and then imagine it becoming bigger and bolder. So now this courage, she's got butterfly wings. We had a caterpillar earlier in the book, didn't we? And now she's got these butterfly wings coming off of her, and they're starting to light up the whole car and the area around it. You can make your courage so big it brightens your heart, fills your fingers, and flows to your toes. Again, you want to get those sensory details into the words. And then the illustrator can expand upon that. Now we're getting a lot of points of light and brightness because her courage is starting to grow. Think about what you're good at, something you love, or someone who loves you. And as we're heading toward this idea of thinking about someone who loves you, notice the sun is starting to come up over the horizon. And we have this lovely deer and a fawn right there. But you'll know you glow and you'll know you are ready. Okay, we've got the bird motif. We had a caterpillar, we had a bird, and we had a dog. At the beginning, boys, they showed up in pictures. Now we've got these birds showing up again. These are all symbols that help with the ideas of courage. Now we're back to that photo album. Remember previously we had photos of things she was afraid to try? These are pictures after she had tried those things and was successful. No matter how deep the water, how loud the crowd, how hard the ride, or how much there is to do, you might struggle, you might succeed. People might clap or laugh or not notice at all. No matter what happens, you'll be all right. So the author's whole point is you've already been brave. You just don't even realize it. If you think about it and you remember, you'll know that you already have courage inside you. But telling a kid that isn't going to mean anything to them. So the author had to lead the reader bit by bit through the story, show them this through describing what it feels like to be brave by having that spark grow inside you. And then the illustrator added the concrete evidence through this photo album in a way that kids can understand. First she was afraid to jump in the water, then she did it, and look how happy she is. Because once you find your courage, it's easy to use again and again. The next time life seems scary or you new, you can remember when you were brave, and then you can stand straight and walk tall. So now here we are, morning, the sun has come up, we're coming into a new town, there's no more rain, and there she is standing in front of her new house, and she's wearing her blanket like a superhero cape. All of those things add to the text. And look who's next door. Some new friends. Knowing you are as brave as a bird, a dog, and a caterpillar. The new friends come and they've got a dog, just like her old friends did. And of course, we've had those birds and the caterpillar turning into a butterfly throughout the entire book, but they also are her toys. So those symbols go throughout the entire story. As brave as you. And so here she is ready to face her new life in her new home. So again, the text, if you saw it written out, it's very powerful, but it's very spare. And the illustrator really created the plot of the move from one house to another just through the pictures. It wasn't detailed in the text. Okay, we're going to read one more book and then I'm just going to show you let's see, where do I want to go? I want to go back to this one. Oh, nope, nope, sorry. This one, well, I'll show you this one right now since we are here. I'm not going to read this whole story to you, but this book I wanted to show you because it's a great example of how an illustrator can add a lot of symbolism and the tone to the words with the pictures. And it's another great example of why the right illustrator is so, so important to a book. So this book, Going Down Home with Daddy, was a Caldecott Honor book this year, I believe. Again, I can't remember one year to the next anymore, but I think it was this year. I'm just going to read you from the jacket copy what this story is about. On reunion morning, we rise before the sun. Daddy hums as he packs our car with suitcases and a cooler full of snacks. He says there's nothing like going down home. Down home is Granny's house. Down home is where Lil Alan and his parents and sister will join grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins in a rich celebration of family history. Down home is where Little Alan will hear stories of the ancestors and visit the land that has meant so much to all of them. And down home is where all of the children will find their special way to pay tribute to family history. Sis will sing His Eyes on the Sparrow, Granny's favorite song. Isaiah will read Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. Devin has made a scrapbook in Granny's favorite color, blue. But what will little Alan do? So that's the story. The story is really about this great family reunion. And our main character, little Alan, has to come up with something that he does on the last night to pay tribute to the family, because that's tradition. All the kids do something and he can't figure out what to do. So that's kind of the tension going through the book. But it's really a celebration of family history. So I encourage you all to read this book. I'm just going to show you a few pages from it because I want to show you the amazing illustrations if you haven't already seen them. So Daniel Minter, the illustrator, took symbols from West African culture and Drinka symbols. I think I'm saying that word right. Adinkra symbols. And they are symbols that we see on the clothing and in the fabric and in the tiles and that kind of thing. And they all have special meaning. This particular one that you see kind of in the background of this page, almost like a watermark, this is showing up in the background of all the pages. And that particular one is called Sankofa. And that symbol means learn from the past or connecting the past to the present. And so he is infusing every picture with the symbolism of family history. And this is about a family who were brought over from West Africa as slaves. Then they worked in the cotton fields on this particular land. Then they became free and they bought the land and they farmed it. And that's where Granny's house is. So this land is very important to the family history. And so all through the book, we see these symbols, and there is a color palette here that is so gorgeous. The blues are the very introspective scenes. When we get to the farm, here's Granny. Isn't she magnificent? And I love her chickens. And her dress changes in every picture. It has different symbols in each picture, but that all tie in with the themes of the book. When we get to the farm, we get those earth tones and those greens and those yellows. And as the story goes on, see how Granny's dress has changed. The family comes, but each one of them is dressed in these beautiful colors and patterns. And when the father starts telling the kids about, the farm and we farmed it and about his father, we see again these colors of the earth. I love this scene. And it's almost like the ghosts of crops past. We have the cotton here on this this previous scene. I don't know why this won't let me go back. But anyway, it was okra that looked like ghosts along the bottom of the page. And it all ties in with what's going on in the story. So it's almost like the past and the present, they're layered, but they're just as important in the illustrations. You're looking at both at the same time. Again, that's what the right illustrator will do for your story. And this is why authors usually can't pick their own illustrators. An editor might say, give me some suggestions, some illustrators you like. What kind of illustrations do you envision for your book? But you have to allow the editor and art director to really expand the vision for you, because they have experience with this and they know what different illustrators can do. And again, if you are self-publishing, this is so important to make the right choice. So you want to find an illustrator who can not just draw a nice picture, but who can show story. And so you're going to want to see samples from that illustrator where they actually sample pages from some kind of story, so you can see how they develop that story through the pictures. Look at this last scene when the family reunion is over, they're all driving away. Here's grandma, and she's got this tree growing in her gown, where its roots are going into the earth and the branches are reaching out. And everything that happened in that book was about this family and their family tree. So again, the symbolism is just beautiful and gorgeous. And I just think you should all read the book. So my last book I'm going to show you, we're going back to Kindle. Where was I? I was here. Whoop. Nope, wrong one. Sorry. I have way too many windows open. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to, this moose belongs to me. Okay, so Oliver Jeffers, this is the only one in my whole presentation who wrote and illustrated the same book. But as I said, I really feel the text is so brilliant that if he had been given this text by another author, he would have ended up with the same pictures as what he has. And a lot of you probably know this book. And this is another one of those stories where the text gives us the character's viewpoint and what the character knows, and then the illustrations give us everything he doesn't know. And that's what makes it so funny. Wilfred owned a moose. I love this first line. It is just like such a great statement. And I love Wilfred standing here like, ta-da. So Wilfred is an interesting character, and the words give us a lot of clues as to how the illustrator might draw Wilfred. First of all, his name, Wilfred. That is not the kind of name kids have today. It's an old-fashioned name. Probably a family name, okay? He owns a moose. That is not a thing that most kids could say. So he's a little bit of an unusual kid, but we're going to learn more about him as we go on here. He hadn't always owned a moose. The moose came to him a while ago, and he just knew that it was meant to be his. He thought he would call him Marcel. Okay, this gives us a little more information about Wilfred. So the author has never said Wilfred liked to wear bow ties. He was a very proper kid. He liked old-fashioned, sophisticated names. He doesn't have to say anything like that, but just the way Wilfred is presented to the reader through his attitude, he just knew the moose was meant to be his. Wilfred doesn't think things through a lot, okay, but he's very sure of himself. And he's giving the moose the name Marcel, which is just perfect. That, again, is not a kid-like name. That's more of a name that a sophisticated adult might think of. And here in the picture, Wilfred is putting a tag on Marcel's antlers. So the way he's portrayed in the words gives the illustrator clues as to how to draw him. And again, if this was someone who hadn't, if a different writer had given Oliver Jeffers these words, I think Oliver Jeffers could have gotten enough information to create this Wilfred. He began following Marcel, explaining the rules of how to be a good pet. Much of the time, it seemed as though the moose wasn't listening, but Wilford knew he was, mostly because he followed rule number 4 very well, not making too much noise while Wilford plays his record collection. Okay, that gives us a lot more information about this character. He has a record collection, okay? That's old school. And he has rules. So he's probably, a little uptight. He's got his little suspenders and his bow tie on, and I love the way, look at the album covers. These are not hip hop, okay? Wilford's not into hip hop or even rock and roll. Probably it looks like he's got records there from like the 30s and 40s, which is really funny. Sometimes the moose wasn't a very good pet. He generally ignored rule number 7, going whichever way Wilford wants to go. The moose had a very good sense of direction, and Wilford did not. And because the moose was particularly poor at rule number 7, subsection B, maintains a certain proximity to home, Wilford quickly learned to bring some string along on their outings so he could find his way back again. Okay, so let's take a look at what Wilford doesn't know, which the pictures are showing us. The moose is just being a moose. He's not breaking Wilford's rules. He doesn't know about Wilford's rules. He's just wandering around like a moose does, and he's eating apples that he finds whenever he can, and that's all he's doing. He's being a moose. Wilford thinks he's a pet, following the rules and sometimes breaking them. So that's what the humor is here. And so the attitude of the moose, his facial expressions, his posture, there he's just prancing off in whatever direction he wants to go, shows us that disparity with the illustrations and the words. Sometimes the moose was an excellent pet. He had no trouble with rule 11, providing shelter from the rain. So here, Wilford thinks the moose is doing this on purpose. He's following this rule. The moose is just standing there, but he happens to be keeping Wilford dry. Or rule 16, knocking down things that are out of Wilford's reach. Again, the moose just was going for an apple. One day, as Wilford discussed their plans for the coming year on a particularly long walk, he made a terrible discovery. So I love these plans that Wilford's discussing. Again, it doesn't say in the text what they are, but because we know Wilford kind of thinks, extravagantly here, he's not the most practical kid. His plans are pretty extravagant. In the pictures, he shows him and the moose in a barrel going over Niagara Falls, it looks like. And the moose is just oblivious, walking along. Someone else thought she owned the moose. Rodrigo, you're back. So here they've stumbled upon someone else who the moose has clearly visited in the past. Wilford was dumbstruck. This moose was Marcel, not Rodrigo. The old lady was mistaken, and Wilford thought it only proper that he correct her. This moose belongs to me, he explained. I just love the names in this book. And, names can give you so much insight as into character and to how the illustrator might depict these characters. So that is something to think about as an author. And then as an illustrator, look at how the lady, her background has a completely different feel to it. And just putting a different background, a different type of house behind her, different illustration style, it gives us a completely different personality to that character. Okay, how do I continue? And to prove it, he called Marcel heel. But the moose did not respond. He seemed more interested in the old lady. Good, Rodrigo. So clearly the moose is not trained as Wilford had hoped. Embarrassed and enraged, Wilford rushed off for home. Fine. But in his haste and miles from anywhere, he tripped over his string and got tangled up. Oh no, Wilford's in trouble. And there he lay. Wilford was beginning to get a little worried, and it was getting late and the monsters would be out soon. Suddenly, Wilford's thinking like a regular old kid, isn't he? Because he's all alone in the dark. But look at where he landed, right under the apple tree. That gives us hope, doesn't it? So, That is a clue the illustrator put in there, because the moose is just acting like a moose. He's not going to go rescue Wilfred because he doesn't know that's his job. But we know that every time he passed an apple in the previous illustrations, he stopped to eat it. He had just ruled out the last of his options, and I love these options: getting rescued by Smokey the Bear, he doesn't have a hammer, that looks like a penguin or something, or saw. There's no swordfish nearby to cut the string. So Wilfred's in trouble when along came the moose and performed Rule 73 brilliantly, rescuing your owner from perilous situations. Did he really do that? No, he's bending down to eat the apple. He just happened to hook Wilfred in his antler. All was forgiven, and perhaps Wilfred admitted he'd never really owned the moose anyway. So at the bottom of this illustration, his tag, Wilfred has ripped the tag off of Marcel's antlers, and they're following the string back home. With that in mind, he and the moose reached a compromise. The moose would agree to all of Wilfred's rules, which apparently include bringing him a drink on a tray while wearing a tuxedo, whenever it suited him. So Wilfred finally learns that he really doesn't have a pet moose. And I love this final little joke at the end. Dominic, you're back, and you brought me an apple. So clearly Marcel had a lot of friends who thought that he was their pet. So anyway, those are 4 books. And I see you have a lot of questions, so I will answer some of them. My voice is starting to, oh good, some of them. Thank you for some nice comments here. So Jean asked, do you think the author suggested it or the illustrator just did it? And I don't know which book you were referring to, but I knew I was going to get that question from you guys. So basically, for example, with the last book I read, This Moose Belongs to Me, that text alone was enough. You wouldn't have to suggest anything to an illustrator. A good illustrator with a sense of humor, with the right tone, the right style to their illustrations, can expand on that story very easily. With Sam and Dave Dig a Hole, now Mac Barnett and John Klassen have worked together on other books, so there probably was some communication there, but assuming they hadn't, I think it is perfectly acceptable for the author to submit 1 or 2 sentences of that manuscript saying something like, when they dig, they are just missing treasure and not quite getting there. You know, something like that. And let the illustrator come up with everything else. I read an interview with them one time, or watched an interview rather, about this book. And I believe, if I remember correctly, John Klassen was the one who decided we need a dog. So he added that detail, but I might be mistaken there. But that's the kind of detail a really good illustrator will come up with. And of course, you're going to see the illustrations at various points, so you're going to know that this is going on. But you want an illustrator who can imagine those kinds of things. As far as the When You Are Brave, it could be that the author just said the girl is moving to a new home in this story, and let the illustrator imagine everything else. So that's, a lot of you have questions about that. So the age ranges for these books, I think, let's see, the When You're Brave would be probably, you know, the basic 4 to 8. The Sam and Dave Dig a Hole and This Moose Belongs to Me, those are books that work on a lot of levels. You read them to a younger kid, like a 4-year-old, they get certain layers of the story, and then the older kids see other layers. So again, they can be read out loud to anywhere that 4 to 8 range. Going Down Home with Daddy, I think, again, can be read on a lot of levels. I think it can really be appreciated by kids maybe anywhere from 6 to 10 years old, 7 to 10, but younger kids can certainly get a lot out of that story. Remember, these are going to be read out loud to kids, so you don't have to worry so much about vocabulary. Kids can understand a lot more spoken language, and especially when they have the illustrations to give them context, then they might be able to read on their own at certain ages. Okay. So the text in second person, that was, yes, When You Are Brave, the book about the girl moving to the new neighborhood. The author is using the you. So basically, speaking to the reader, now the girl in the illustrations was representing the reader, but the book was really about the author telling the reader, you are brave. You can do this. You can face these new situations. So that can be very effective when you're writing that kind of story. The word count in the Brave picture book, I don't know. I imagine it wasn't very long. I imagine it's probably anywhere from 500 to 700 words at most. What's a great resource that you can do when you're studying mentor texts? There's a website called AR Bookfinder. It stands for Accelerated Reader Bookfinder. Accelerated Reader is a program used in schools to help track kids' reading progress. The website is called arbookfind.com. arbookfind.com. And you can go there and type in the title of any book, and it will give you the word count, the age range, the reading level, all sorts of stuff. So it's a really great tool, arbookfind.com. But I imagine that book was not much more than 500 words. How can you know if the text story you've written might be too spare and an author or agent might think there isn't enough story there while you're thinking an illustrator would co-create the story, as in these examples? There's almost nothing such as too spare these days. Editors and agents are buying books that have 300-400 words, and yet they have incredible story in them. So if your words imply or inspire pictures in the reader's mind, if an editor can read this and imagine what's happening, imagine what the pictures might look like, you're fine. And again, if your text is so spare that you feel they're not going to have any idea of what they're reading, remember, you are sending a query letter along with the manuscript in most cases. So in your query, you're giving a little tiny synopsis of what the story is about. So you can describe in a couple sentences what you intend to be the plot of the story, and then they're going to have that in their head while they're reading it. So you shouldn't worry too much about that. So for stories like You're Brave, When You Are Brave, that aren't framed around a particular event or story action, should you suggest a possible story frame when submitting it? Like I said, I think in this case, again, in that query letter, you can say this is a story of a girl moving into a new neighborhood, moving cross country to a brand new neighborhood, and finding the courage to face this new unknown situation in her life. And then that's all you need to say in your query, and then you've got the text. Most agents and editors, when they ask for a picture book query, they also ask you to attach the manuscript. So you're going to have that both together, and then in your synopsis, you will give them the idea of what the story's about. So Kathy says, this sounds awful, but when I see and read picture books in a bookstore as great as the Moose story, I start feeling so inadequate. Is this normal? Absolutely. It's completely normal. Trust me. And what I do on these things is I try to give you what I consider are some of the very best examples of books out there. These are things that you want to be aspiring to and to reaching for. Nobody starts there. None of these people who I read to you started at this level. It took a lot of practice. And one way that you get better besides writing a lot is reading a lot. Believe it or not, if you spend time, I always tell people, especially if you're a picture book writer, you need to have read at least 100 picture books before you feel you are ready to submit your work to an editor, because that's the only way you're going to start infusing into your work the best practices of picture book writing. And it will open up your mind to all these different picture book voices out there. Your voice might not be Oliver Jeffers' voice or Mac Barnett's voice. That's fine. You don't have to write like them. Maybe your voice is more like When You Are Brave, like Pat Miller's voice, or something completely different. Your job is to find your own voice, but don't beat yourself up for not being at that level right now. They took years to get there. And you know what? Even there's a lot of published books out there that don't have that unique a voice and that are still amazing books. So hang in there. Do authors have any say in illustrations when they are not author illustrators? Very little. It really depends on the publisher. Like I said, a lot of editors might ask you, who are your favorite illustrators? Is there a certain type of illustration that you were thinking about when you wrote this book? They might, just to kind of feel you out and get your ideas a little bit. But they are going to have the final say on who gets the contract to illustrate your story. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It's when you submit your work to a publisher and they give you a book contract, you enter into a business agreement. And this final product of this beautiful book that you end up with is a collaboration between you and the illustrator. You're the ones who get your names on the book, but the editor, the art director, they also collaborate heavily. They don't get their names on the book. So you have to understand that it's this business agreement and everybody has something at stake. So you need to trust that the people whose job it is to do this know what they're doing. But there will be back and forth. They will keep you in the loop as to who they're speaking to, the kind of illustrations that they're looking at, that kind of thing. They're not just going to shut you out completely. Terry says, if using a set of cultural symbols, is it good to add back matter for explanations? I think, sure. And a lot of books now have back matter, even books that are fiction, if they're based on a culture or an event, a historical event, anything like that. So it never hurts to have back matter, whether or not the publisher decides you need it. That's a discussion that you can have with your editor. But I love back matter, and more books have them, fiction and nonfiction. Okay, Lisa says, I'm just starting to research a question regarding addressing touchy topics. I have a question regarding wording that may suggest something that may lead to a child doing something wrong or unsafe. And when you are brave, mentioning you have a light inside you can turn into a flame. Could that lead a child to play with matches, for instance? She continues on the next question here. Okay, so question continues with, I ask because a story I'm writing includes a child with a parent sitting in the park, and a stranger, an old man, starts interacting with the child, but glancing at mom for permission. Question addressed in story is talking to a stranger. I'm explaining if the person knows both the child and parent. Okay, so basically, that's a good question. I mean, people are always wondering, what do I put in a picture book that will a child do this? So in When You Are Brave, I think it's very clear from the illustrations and from the wording that this light is inside you, and it's a metaphor. But you can't guarantee that some 4-year-old kid is going to find a lighter somewhere and go, oh, here's the light inside me, and start flicking on the lighter. You can't guarantee that with anything. I think that as an author, you write the best book you can. You have the editor guide you, and clearly they weren't worried about that particular image. And I think that if you're a parent reading with the child, you can easily fill in that information, because a kid might ask, is that a real light inside her? And they can say, no, it's more like an imaginary light. And they can talk that through. In your particular example, the parent's sitting in the park and the old man is getting permission from the mother to talk to the child. That is a more complicated issue. And I think that in that sort of situation, it needs to be clear in the text that the man said to mom and child, is it okay if I sit and talk to you for a minute? And the mother said, yes, sure, you can sit here with us. And then maybe farther on in the story, the child asked the mother, well, he was a stranger. Why did you let him sit down? And she can explain, well, we were together and it was okay. I mean, if it sounds like your story, here's my final point on this, because it's so hard without seeing the actual manuscript. If your story is actually about this incident, then it's going to require some explanation in the text. If this is just a passing scene in the story and it doesn't have to be this complicated, I wouldn't make it this complicated. So if the old man doesn't have to be a stranger and your plot can continue the same as you plan, don't make him a stranger. So don't overly complicate your story unless you absolutely have to. But I agree, when you're dealing with something like strangers, kids get very specific rules, and young kids are very rule-oriented, and they don't see gray area very well until they're about 7 years old. So 7, 8 years old. So it would have to be made very clear in the text that it was okay because mom was there. It wouldn't be okay if he was alone. I know that's a long answer to your question. I didn't even see the last part of it. Question is about the child unable to read, and is it okay to ask someone to help? Oh, to help read. Okay, well, again, I think that if he can possibly not be a stranger, if he's a neighbor who walks by, so it's someone they already know, that would be better. Because then you're getting into the whole area of a kid asking a stranger for help. And that might take your story in a different direction than you want it to go. Okay, last question. How do I let the publisher or author know the animated pencil in my book should have African-American features, or do I have to leave that up to the publisher? You can suggest it. What I would do is not even mention it until you get a book contract. Unless it's clear from what's happening in the story that this pencil is of has a race or has racial features. But if you can't tell that from the text, then I would wait until you get a book contract and you guys start talking about the illustrations. And then you can say, I always envisioned this pencil as having these features. And the editor will keep that in mind when choosing an illustrator. Often illustrators will add diversity in their illustrations that is not in the text. So that, again, that is a conversation you can have with your editor. But I would wait until you get a book contract, because you don't want to sound like you're being a demanding author right up front. Not that that's demanding, but okay. I am going to answer one question from the chat box, and then we're done, because whoa, it's almost 7:30. Let's see. Are ebooks ever replacing the printed books in this electronic age? What are the current target age groups for children's books? Okay, so as far as ebooks replacing printed books, no. And especially, we had, Emma Dryden and I had this conversation 2 weeks ago on the Distancing Social, so you can go back and look at that replay on our blog if you didn't see that. She's an editor. Especially in picture books. Ebooks are nice because they're portable when you're going on an airplane, whatever, but the print picture book is never going away. That is such a shared experience with an adult and a child. That is never going away. Ebooks really aren't even that big a deal in kids' books until we get to YA, because younger kids usually are reading more the printed book. They're reading in school, that kind of thing. And then with young adult, it's split. I mean, I know a lot of teenagers, and my son was one of them, who did not like to read ebooks. He liked the printed book. So no, I don't think printed books are ever going away. So I would not worry about that. What are the current target age groups for children's books? So if you go on our blog, writeforkids.org, along the top, there's a little tab. I think it says categories. And if you click the one for beginners, we have an article on that breaks down the age groups of children's books. So I would refer you to that, because it's not a short answer. So please do that. So anyway, thank you all so much for coming. Please come back. Next week, we have Josh Funk, who's an amazing, really funny guy. He writes series, picture book series, but he's going to talk about writing series in general. So even if you're not writing picture books, you'll get a lot of information from him. That's going to be really, really fun. So thank you for sticking with me as I expound on picture books, hanging in there so long, and we'll see you next week. All right. Thank you. Good night.